Surat An-Nisaa we've been covering, and the previous verse was about fighting, and it talks about that you have to fight a group of people if they are actually in a state of war with you. Okay, so that was the last verse. So if you remember slightly, the last verse was a verse that sometimes people quote against Muslims. It says, if they turn away, then grab them and kill them wherever you find them, and don't take any of them as allies or helpers. So it's very important to understand the context here of this is war, and these are enemies who are trying to attack the Muslims and trying to kill them. But if you look at the next verse, it adds more context here. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ إِلَىٰ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. Except, meaning don't fight those people who are allies of people you are bound with in a treaty. So group number one that you're not supposed to fight is, even when they're disbelievers, you do not fight them if they're an ally of your ally, basically. So they become your indirect ally. So if you have a treaty with somebody and they have a treaty with the other person, even if they're hostile towards you or they were hostile towards you, you don't need a direct treaty with them. The friend of your friend is your friend. Right? So this is exactly what Allah is saying. أَوْ جَاءُوكُمْ حَصِرَتْ صُدُورُهُمْ أَن يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ أَوْ يُقَاتِلُوا قَوْمَهُمْ. Nor should you fight those opposed to fighting either you or their own people. Right? So basically what that means is they're trying to seek a treaty with you. So this verse requires a little bit of explanation. So there are some people who imagine they are in an enemy state. Let's take North Korea, for example, right? America is kind of like at war with North Korea. So let's say you have people within North Korea, they don't want to fight the United States in case, let's say, a war broke out. May Allah protect us. They don't want to fight America. At the same time, they don't want to fight their own people either, because if they don't, and they're enemies, their people are going to be like, hey, if you don't fight our enemy, then you become our enemy within your own country. But then there are people who say, look, I don't want to fight you, and I don't want to fight them. I don't want any problem with anyone. I don't want to fight anybody. I just want to remain neutral. So Allah is saying, the people who want to remain neutral, you're not allowed to fight them either. And there's ways to figure out who really wants to be neutral or not. There's some people are your open enemy. Some people are your open friend. And some people, they're just kind of neutral. They're like, I don't like you, but I don't hate you. I'm not going to be nice to you, but I'm not going to fight you either. In Islam, are you allowed to fight them? No. Very clear from the verse. You're not allowed to fight people who want to be neutral, even though they don't want to be your friend. They don't want to make an alliance with you. They don't want to have a treaty with you. They don't want to trade with you. They're not going to be nice to you, but they just want to remain neutral, and they want to have nothing to do with you directly. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَسَلَّطَهُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ فَلَقَاتَلُوكُمْ. If Allah wanted, He would have allowed them to fight you. Meaning basically He would have allowed them to basically attack you. But instead, what are they doing? These are people who are trying to be neutral, and they want to have some type of alliance of neutrality. We're neither supporting you nor are we against you. So basically what Allah is saying is there's different groups of people. Imagine this is in Medina. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Sahaba are living in Medina, and there are tribes who want to go and attack the Muslims. Who are people who are openly wanting to attack the Muslims? What's the name of one tribe that is hostile to Islam at this time, and they just want to come and attack the city of Medina? Anybody? You know? Banu Nadir. So Banu Nadir is a good example. They actually ended up becoming an enemy of Islam, and they openly were hostile, but in the beginning they were pretending, so they were being hypocritical in the beginning. So that wouldn't be the best example. There's another example that's openly. They're like, we're ready to attack you at any time. Banu Qurayza was the same. Banu Qurayza was playing the game. So the only time they showed their true face was during the Battle of the Trench, Battle of Khandaq. So none of the Jewish tribes openly opposed Islam until they got the perfect opportunity and they thought that they were about to, get victory. So they were very good at playing the hypocrite role. What's another open enemy of the Muslims? Go ahead, Jabir. The Quraysh, exactly. like لِإِلَافِ Quraysh, the tribe of Quraysh, the Prophet's own tribe, openly hostile to Islam. They were the ones who, Battle of Badr, Battle of Uhud, Battle of Khandaq, they're the ones who orchestrated the attack on the city of Medina. So they are openly opposed to the Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying those people who are openly attacking you, like the Quraysh, and of course the Prophet's from Quraysh, so obviously he's not his own enemy. Abu Bakr, Umar, they're all from Quraysh too. It means the Quraysh who remained in Mecca and who didn't become Muslim, and they're the leaders of the Quraysh. Those are the ones who are hostile. So they're openly hostile. So those are the ones that are being told you're allowed to fight them and attack them, and anyone that's allying with them and is teaming up with them to fight you, you're allowed to fight them. Who are you not allowed to fight? Number one, you cannot fight anybody who has a treaty with you, even if they're not Muslim. Number two, you cannot fight anyone who has a treaty with someone who has a treaty with you, indirect ally of yours. And number three, you're not allowed to fight anyone who wants to remain neutral. So what does that mean? Who's left? The only people you're allowed to fight are the people who are trying to kill you. It's pretty simple. It's really not that difficult. So if anyone comes along and tries to quote a verse of the Quran or misquote a verse of the Quran, and they say, see, Islam is so violent, they tell you over there you should kill these people. So who is it saying that you're allowed to fight? You're allowed to fight people who are trying to kill you. It's super summary. It's a summary. You're only allowed to fight people who are trying to kill you. You're not allowed to fight people who are neutral. You're not allowed to fight people who you have an alliance with. You're not allowed to fight people who are an ally of your ally. That's everybody else, right? So it's actually very simple, but people don't want to understand something that's quite simple. فإن اعتزلوكم فلم يقاتلوكم وألقوا إليكم السلم فما جعل الله لكم عليهم سبيلا. If they refrain from fighting you, and if they offer you peace, then Allah does not allow you to harm them. Now, which category is he talking about here? 3 categories you're not allowed to fight. 1 category you're allowed to fight, and that's the Quraysh and all the people who are openly attacking you. Even that group, if they change their mind and they say, you know what, we want to have a peace treaty with you, you're not allowed to harm them anymore. You have to accept the peace treaty. That's as peaceful as you can possibly get, in Islam. So that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling here in these verses. سَتَجِدُونَ آخَرِينَ يُرِيدُونَ أَن يَأْمَنُوكُمْ وَيَأْمَنُوا قَوْمَهُمْ. You will find others, another group of people, who hope to be safe from you and from their own people. So remember the previous group we talked about, like the North Korea group, right? There's like people within North Korea, example that I'm giving. They don't want to fight their own people, but they don't want to fight, their enemy either. So there are some people, that was one category. Here's another category. There are some people, they want to be safe from you. They also want to be safe from their own people. So you think, oh, that's the same category as that one that we were just talking about. But then Allah is going to warn you. Be careful. كُلَّمَا رُدُّوا إِلَى الْفِتْنَةِ أُرْكِسُوا فِيهَا. Yet they cannot resist the temptation. What's a temptation? Every time they get a good opportunity to attack you, they would attack you. So why are they saying, you know what, we don't want to fight the Muslims? That we don't want to fight the Quraysh either. We don't want to be enemies with anybody. But then all of a sudden, if they see the Muslims are weak during one moment, and the Quraysh have like a lot of weapons and everything, this is such a great opportunity. We can easily defeat the Muslims. Let's just go and attack them. So they're not genuine. There are people who, they want to be neutral when it's in perfectly good, it's a great opportunity to be neutral. The moment they see some weakness and opportunity to come and attack you, they're not genuinely neutral. They will take advantage of the situation. Allah said, this is the temptation. They will be tempted, man, such a good opportunity, let's just go and attack the Muslims. They will do it. So Allah is saying, you gotta watch out for those people. Some people pretend like they're neutral, but they're not neutral. They're only neutral when there's a balance of power. The moment the Muslim power shifts down a little bit, they will utilize that opportunity to attack you. So be careful. فَإِن لَّمْ يَعْتَزِلُوكُمْ وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ وَيَكُفُّوا أَيْدِيَهُمْ فَخُذُوهُمْ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ. If they do not keep away, meaning if they don't keep away from getting so close that they're about to attack you, and if they don't eventually offer you peace, and if they don't refrain from attacking you, then you're going to fight them. You can grab them and kill them wherever you find them, which is the same as the previous verse, which was saying that you're allowed to fight them. And again, I mentioned this before last week, that this wording was psychological to avert the attack from the bullies. If you guys remember, we talked about how do you keep a bully away from you? You got to use tough language. So this is not for the Muslims, it's more of a warning to the other people who are coming and waiting for an opportunity to attack the Muslims. That's why the wording is more harsh. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ وَأُولَٰئِكُمْ جَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. We have given you full permission against them. Meaning, these type of people who are not doing any of these things, or they're doing these things, you have full permission to wage war against this group of people. Because they're dangerous. Alright, the next section, verse 92. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. It cannot be that a believer kills another believer except by mistake. So basically, the way that Allah is wording this, instead of saying, make sure if you're a Muslim, never kill another Muslim. Basically the same thing, but the wording that's being used is even stronger than that. It's like, it can't possibly be that a Muslim would kill another Muslim. Now, does it happen? Yes, it happens. We talked about that I think we talked about it last class, or we talked about it in one of the khatiras last week. But that's horrible. How can something like this happen? And it says, except by mistake. Now, this could happen mistakenly. Now, how do you accidentally kill somebody? Right? It's very, very rare, but we're primarily talking about in the context of war. So in the context of war, you can accidentally kill somebody because you may misfire an arrow. You may not recognize who the other person is because they're in disguise. They're not wearing the proper uniform or something. It may be nighttime. You can't see. There was no night vision, optical, whatever, glasses and stuff that you could use. So it's stuff like this happen. وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ يَصَّدَّقُوا. Whoever kills a believer accidentally must free a believing slave and pay blood money to the victim's family, unless they generously waive it. So now we're talking about a legal rule here. This is fiqh. So what happens is, if somebody accidentally kills somebody else, meaning that they weren't trying to do that, but they misfired, or they didn't recognize that this was a Muslim they're attacking, they hit the wrong person or something, there's still a consequence. There's some things when you make a mistake, there are consequences for what happens. So you can't just be like, sorry. It's like, there's a penalty. But I said sorry, right? Probably happens to your parents sometimes. You take something and you drop it and you break it, and it's like a really big deal. Or you violate something and you do something really, really wrong, and then you're in trouble. And then you say, oh, I'm sorry. You say, well, there's going to be a punishment. But why is there a punishment? I said sorry. It's like, no, you can say sorry, the sorry is accepted, but there's still going to be a punishment. So even if you did something accidentally, but somebody died, this is a really serious thing, there are going to be consequences. So what the consequences are is, number one, you have to free a believing slave. So there were Muslims who were slaves. So in order to liberate them, you'll have to pay the money of freeing an entire slave, which was quite expensive at the time. And you have to pay blood money to the murdered person or the killed person's family. And these are their direct heirs, because they just lost a family member. And no matter how many sorries you say, you cannot make up for that. At the same time, I'm going to explain that. It's coming. At the same time, what happens is that money is not going to solve all the problems, right? You can't bring the person back. Money doesn't make up for the loss of a family member. but it does provide some level of potential comfort here, right? So this is optional, and it's going to be to the people who would be inheriting from that person, which means the closest family members, right? Unless they generously waive it. So they can say, you know what, I I understand you really did this accidentally, and you really didn't mean it at all, and I'm not going to ask you even for any money. You still have to free the slave, because there's two aspects. Freeing the slave is one of the responsibilities that you have to do. It's between you and Allah, and it's good for the society. And then on the other hand, there's a compensation that you have to give to the family. So there's two types of crimes. It's very important to understand law. There's two types of crimes. There's a capital offense, and then there's a civil offense. A capital offense is basically where you have law enforcement involved. The philosophy behind it is you've committed a crime against the society because you killed somebody, you stole something. This is not just the other person, but you've made the whole society a less safe place to be. That's why there's police and public law enforcement get involved in all of that. And then there is a civil matter. You have an argument with your spouse and something happened, and it's only between the two of you. There's no other, it's just like you got into a business dispute or something like that. This is known as a civil case. So when it comes to killing somebody, even when it comes to intentional murder, which we covered before in the previous tafsir, and when it comes to accidental killing, in Islamic law, the way that killing is viewed is it's a capital crime and it's also a civil crime. It's between you and the state, quote unquote, and it's between you and the private party or the family of the parties involved. Now, when it comes to American law and many modern laws, it's just a matter of the state. It's not a civil issue. The family has nothing to do with anything. And this law is similar to some legal systems had similar ways of looking at a crime of killing somebody. One of the ones that resembles the Islamic law is actually ancient Greece. Ancient Greece had the similar way of saying that, you know what, there's an aspect of public safety and there's an aspect of compensation to the family that is required to be due. Okay, so that is the rule in Islamic law. So blood money, we've talked about this before when it comes to murder. Who remembers what is the amount of blood money? All right, and that blood money sounds like, if you didn't know this before, it sounds like a stack of money. There's like blood all over it. You have to give it to somebody. Sounds horrible. That's not what we're talking about at all. Blood money means that you killed somebody, and because you killed someone, their blood probably came out when they were dying. It's normal. So this is money for the purpose of killing someone. They just call it blood money, right? This is a nickname for it. So how much money is this?
How much the family wants?
Whatever they want. So the family goes, I want $100 billion. What do you do? Huh? How much? A camel? One camel? 100 camels. That's right. So it's the value of 100 camels. How much do you think a camel costs today? It's a pretty expensive camel. So yeah, more than that probably. A camel. A camel. What do you say? What do you say? Camel what? Camel meat. No, the camel itself, right? So it's a lot of money, right? So it's very expensive, and that's what you have to give them, unless they are going to waive some of this partially. Okay, so that is the killing. فَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ عَدُوٍّ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. If the victim, the one who died, is a believer, he's a Muslim, but he's from a group of enemies. So he happens to be from, let's say he's from the tribe of Quraysh, living in Mecca, but he accepted Islam. He just hasn't left them yet. Then a believing slave must be freed. But notice there's no blood money. So you don't pay the blood money. Why would you not pay the blood money? Because if you paid it to the family members, who are they? They're not Muslim, and they're at war with the Muslims. You don't give your enemy who's fighting you money. So you see the difference in the ruling. And then there's a third rule. وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ فَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ وَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. If the victim is, meaning if they're not Muslim, if the victim is not a Muslim and they're from a group where there's a treaty between you and between them, then blood money must be paid to the family and a believing slave must be freed. So the same rule as the first one. She said, well, wait a minute, but that's a non-Muslim that was killed, but accidentally killed. Are they allowed to receive this? Yes. They can receive the blood money even though they're not Muslims. But what's the difference between case number 3 and case number 2? One significant difference. Why is one getting money and one is not getting money? Yes. It was whatever you said was super cute, but I have no idea what the heck you said. Yeah. Can someone tell me? Can you tell me what he said? One of them is not Muslim? Oh no, that's not the difference. They're both not Muslim actually. What's the difference?
So one is your enemy and those give blood money to your enemy, and one is your ally. So, but even though they're not Muslim, they're your ally.
Exactly. One is the enemy, one is the ally. That's the only difference. You don't give your enemy money, you can give your ally money. It's not about being Muslim or non-Muslim. It's about being an ally or being an enemy in a state of war. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ تَوْبَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Those who are unable must fast 2 consecutive months to ask forgiveness from Allah. So, I'll explain in a moment. So, 2 months in a row. What does this mean? So first of all, if you cannot free the slave, right, or you can't afford the blood money, but mainly if you can't free the slave, and you can't do what you're supposed to do, you gotta fast as a compensation 2 months in a row. 2 months in a row means 60 days, non-stop, right? You can't be like, I need a break now. This is, you double Ramadan. You gotta fast 2 months in a row as a compensation for that. Now in Islamic law, in the Sharia, there are some other times where you have to fast for 60 days straight. Can anybody tell me one of those scenarios besides Jabir? Say. If you purposely break your fast in Ramadan, the compensation is to fast for 60 days. That's one example. Does anyone know another example? That's the one that you're supposed to know. The other one is a more advanced example. Yeah, Jabir. You're right, but yeah.
If someone say to his wife, you are somebody who's like your mother.
Yes, if somebody goes and tries to swear off his wife by making this old ridiculous statement that the Arab men used to make sometimes, then the compensation is to do that as well. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Allah is knowing and Allah is wise. Let me see. We're out of time actually. So, yeah. So we'll stop here. We will only take the first 3 questions of Kahoot, so we can load it now. Is it ready? Yeah. Okay. So we'll load it. Just the first 3. Yeah. Just delete the 4th question. And any questions on the tafsir that we covered? Yes, please. Exactly. Blood money is normal money that you pay if you killed somebody. Yes, exactly. It's got no different color. It's got no blood on it. It's totally clean. Yes. It's like Ramadan, but 2 times exactly. So Ramadan is how many days? Is it always 30? How many days is Ramadan? Anybody? Sometimes 29, exactly. So it could be 29 or it could be 30. So when it says fast for 2 months, is it a 29-day month or is it a 30-day month? So So we don't know because Allah did not specify. But which one do you think you should pick? The 30. You go 30 times 2, 60 days. You fast for 60 days. Now, if you're sick in between, you don't have to restart. If you have a menstrual period in between, you don't have to restart. But if you have no valid excuse for stopping, then you're going to have to restart even if you missed one day of those fasting. No, they don't. They're not. In fact, they're not supposed to. They're not allowed to. Jabber, you got to take the fifth class with me, inshallah. Coming soon. It's okay. Coming soon, inshallah. She probably didn't inform me.
We did last week.
Yeah.
And this week combined.
Oh, it's combined?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The first one of last week's.
Yeah, bismillah. Okay, we're doing last week's Kahoot as well, so both Kahoots combined. You want to switch laptop?
Yeah.
Just move it over. Which one did you put? Yeah. Which one did you put?